Welcome back to the Bleeding Hearts Club, where we alchemize pain into something beautiful together. I'm your co host, Shroot. I'm an astrologer who helps you use self reflective astrology to cultivate clarity of purpose and ease. And this is my co host.
Hi, y'all. My name is Stevie. I am your tarot reader, Reiki practitioner, death doula, mental health practitioner, worker. I do things with people's minds in a good way. Nice to be back, y'all.
Yeah, it's been a minute. We've been gone. We apologize for being gone for so long. It was not planned, but we both wound up traveling quite a bit. So we couldn't meet. And we're so happy to be back. We missed you guys. We would love to hear how you are, how have things been. Last time we talked about the a-holes, transit round one, and we would love to hear kind of what went down for you, what fell apart, what was strength tested. So feel free to let us know. You can either comment on any of our Instagram, TikTok. You can find the links in our show notes. Or you can send us an email at bleedingheartsclub.pod@gmail.com. You can also on Instagram send us a voice note. We would love to hear your voice. We would love to get some callers on the pod. But yeah, we'd love to know what's going on with you. If you have any questions, especially heading into the A-hole transits round two, we would love to hear them. But in terms of travel, I wound up going to Columbus, Ohio, which I had never been before. And I went to attend a summit that was called the Slowdown Summit. And I highly recommend listeners of the pod check this summit, leadership summit out. It was kind of a professional networking event that was designed for introverts. What was it? Neurodivergent introverts and reflective thinkers. And so I actually found out about it because Allison Stoner, if anybody remembers Allison Stoner, they posted a TikTok about it and how they were speaking at it and that they were giving away like some spots to be able to go. And so I messaged them, got a message back, probably from their assistant, but I was still geeked. And got a discount code to attend, and I wasn't really sure if I'd be able to go. And then I'm really grateful my community on Instagram, for my Astro account, I posted asking if people were interested in supporting me and my ability to go. I did a little fundraiser and it was met like within a minute of posting, which just like I'm still kind of sitting in the abundance of how beautiful and supportive that was. So if you were part of the group that got me to Ohio, thank you so much. It was a life-changing experience for me as a person who works as an astrologer, but specifically in a very interdisciplinary way, where I take a lot of other things into account in my astrology than just astrology. We do a lot of like economics and sociology and history and um, indigenous ways of knowing. Like there's all these kind of modalities that I incorporate in my astrology, and so I've never really found astrology spaces where networking really made the most sense to me, and also that like I don't my favorite people to read for are people who are like kind of into astrology or maybe curious or open about astrology, but they don't have a lot of fixed and perceived notions about astrology because to me the work is more about the transformation in your life and more about practical application of astrology. And I find that people who are really really into astrology, no notes because me too, like I'm not, there's no shade here, but like I find that people are more hung up on the theoretical of the astrology, and that's lovely, that's wonderful, but that's not my ministry. Mine's more practical application. So I really love working with people who are maybe curious or open or tangentially interested, but it's not necessarily like all they live and breathe. Um, Although I do work with plenty of people like that, it's totally fine. But I just, in terms of networking spaces, I never really felt drawn to astrology spaces as a result. And so I always tell people that, like, reflective thinkers, introverts, neurodivergent people, that's literally my target demographic of who I love to work with. And so when I saw this summit, I was like, I have to go. And it was incredible. I think I walked away from the experience learning so many ways of how you can structure community spaces to be supportive to introverts and make introverts feel comfortable, and especially neurodivergents as well, like feel comfortable and safe to be able to share and speak their perspective. And I made some really cool friends, and it was a really really transformative and life-changing experience. So I actually really recommend, like, if any of that sounds like it resonates with you, you should check out the Slowdown Summit. They're going to have more events and I will be there. So I encourage you to join that community because it's really wonderful. So I'll include their link in the show notes if you want to check them out. I highly recommend it. But yeah, where'd you go, Stevie?
Just so happy you got to experience that. You got to go. It sounded like a lot of fun. I loved all the updates I got in our group chat. Where did I go? I went to Durham, North Carolina for the first time ever, um, by way of work in a surprising and really exciting way. I have never been to North Carolina. I went to the South to the for the first time. Was that last year?
Yes, that was. I was gonna say it's your second time because we went to Atlanta,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
last year. Yep.
Yeah, the first time I went to the South was last year. That's when Shroot and I and our pal Andrew went to Atlanta to see Beyonce for Cowboy Carter. Incredible, perfect, super enchanting. I am like so obsessed with the greenery of Atlanta, and it was very similar, like a very similar feeling of enchantment when I went to North Carolina. It is so beautiful and so lush. There's green everywhere. I was actually really surprised by the climate because it felt so similar, not like similar to LA, but I thought it was going to be so much more humid and it wasn't, which was great for that time. I know that I will be back very soon and it will be much hotter and probably more humid, but I had a great time there. I love just exploring new places that I've never been before. I used to be an anthro major in undergrad before I switched to psychology. And so I think just like the practice of like going somewhere and just exploring and seeing, just seeing, observing, witnessing, and participating is always really fun. My highlight is that I got to go to the Duke Lemur Center. I'm going to show you my little guy. It's a little Shafaka lemur wearing a Duke shirt. He's so cute.
What's his
Um,
name?
his name is Jovian. At first, I named him Jovian just to like freak it a little bit, but I think he's just a Jovian. Jovian is the name of the Shafaka lemur that like played Zaboomafoo, the real lemur, not the puppet lemur. I loved Zaboomafoo growing up. I remember when he died in 2014, it was a month apart away from Robin Williams' death. I was devastated. I was not okay. I went from a long drive to Santa Cruz to like Daly City, which is where I was from. Like even before my like other hometown, I just had to go on a long drive. So it was really cool. I got to do a little tour. I got to walk in the like outdoor habitats that the different kinds of lemurs were outside in. They were so cute and I love them so much. I was giggling, and there are so many videos where I have where our tour guide was like, I don't know, talking about like really more like serious facts about lemur and conservation and stuff, but I was like straight up giggling because they were just so cute. So yeah, that was a highlight of my life. And yeah, I'm really excited that I got to go and I got to see some of the offspring of Jovian. We did talk about Jovian, and it's everything to me. So that's where I was for some of that time.
Jovian is your ancestor. Oh my God.
He
Wait,
is.
that's beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, love it. Yeah, it was really fun because I had my layover. We traveled the same weekend and I had my layover in North Carolina. So there was like a brief window where me and Stevie's little location dots in the chat were in the same state. And it was like, hi, Stevie. Um, which is very sweet. But yeah, okay, that's that. The next thing on the agenda, happy Pride Month, and happy 2 year anniversary to the Bleeding Hearts Club Pod. Like, if you've been with us for all 2 years, we adore you. Thanks for being OG. If you joined somewhere in the mix in these 2 years, thank you so much for joining. We're so happy to have you. It has been such a ride and an adventure for me and Stevie to get this podcast up and out. And so we really appreciate you going on this ride with us. And the feedback, we've gotten, and we've said it before, but I mean, it still really never ceases to amaze us, and it makes us feel so loved and seen and connected. We love to hear your opinions on the pod and your takes on the pod, and so thank you so much for sharing with us. Keep doing that. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything that you're kind of working through in your life, again, we would love to talk about it on the pod. We haven't had an audience question in a minute, so let us know, what you're grappling with, and we would love to do some tarot and astrology for you. You can email a nice little paragraph to um, bleedingheartsclub.pod@gmail.com. And yeah, let us know if we should do a giveaway again. Last year we did a giveaway for a reading. As a thank you for our year anniversary. We would be happy to do it again. So yeah, let us know if that's something you would want. You would get a solo private tarot and astrology reading with me and Stevie. Our joint offerings called Dance with Datura, and the goal of that reading is to help you bloom even in the dark, no matter what season of life you're in. And we kind of give you some grounding pointers to keep in mind and practical strategies to help you navigate whatever you're going through from both tarot and astrology. And we had wonderful, every time Steve and I do a reading together, it's just the person we're reading for is such a delight, and we really love, connecting with you all in that way. And then B, it's thrilling, it's so fun for me and Stevie. So yeah, we'd love to do that. So let us know if you'd like a giveaway. We would do that again. Um, and then let's get into it. So we are in round two of the well, technically we're not in it yet, and thank God we're not in it yet, but it's definitely creeping up and we can definitely feel it. We are in round two of the transits. And so if you didn't hear the last episode before this, I talked about how when Saturn and Neptune moved into Aries in April of this year, it kicked off round one of the transits. And I've basically been calling them that this year because it's been such a abrasive experience. The transits, I mean, Saturn and Neptune and Aries are not gentle, they're not kind, they're not polite, they're not sweet, soft. Like it's Aries is a Mars ruled sign. It's aggressive, it's abrasive, it's putting yourself out there as you are with no kind of no punches pulled. And so a lot of people are really kind of reacting in outsized ways. One of the things that I heard from a lot of people on TikTok and in my kind of client list and in the people in my life is one of the patterns that emerged as a result of these transits in April was workplace abuse, where a lot of people who have been experiencing workplace abuse kind of decided in April that like, oh, that was the line and it's been crossed. And so a lot of people have been taking action against their abusers. A lot of people are working to hold their abusers accountable, maybe leaving those workplaces. Like I've noticed a lot of action and mobility around an abusive workplace in which the year before maybe people who had identified these workplaces as abusive weren't really doing anything about it. They were maybe knowing it, but they weren't acting on it. And I think when Saturn and Neptune moved into Aries, it produced kind of a sense of drive within people of no, I actually have to take action. And so some of the questions that we talked about last time that I think are really important to still be thinking about is, what is your identity and character built on? And how sturdy and solid is that foundation? And what will you do when external forces shake it? Because you can guarantee July and August of this year, there will be external forces that are going to be shaking your sense of identity and character and the foundation that it's built on. And so it's really kind of important to sit with that now. It's a bit, I don't want to say difficult to sit with that during Gemini season. So, when we roll into Cancer season, I think it will be a little bit easier to be honest with yourself and not be so kind of overwhelmed about everything going on. Because I feel like this Gemini season has been a lot of new opportunities and new experiences that are available to people. And I think people almost have like a little bit of FOMO where they're like, I don't want to miss out. And so I'm going to say yes to everything. And so I've seen a lot of like people being overcommitted. I've seen a lot of people really stretched too thin. Their calendar got full. They don't really realize how it happened. And I've had more clients reschedule appointments with me. Me too. Like, I'm not saying that it was just my clients, like literally even me too. I had to reschedule a couple times. Like more reschedules have happened for me this Gemini season than I've been in business for 7 years. And it's been more reschedules this month than any other month in my business. So I'm just kind of noticing, and yeah, I definitely think the transits to kind of watch out for in the upcoming near future is on June 19th. Chiron is moving into Taurus, and this one's going to be kind of a big one. Chiron in astrology has to do with a feeling of not enoughness. It's where we find ourselves measuring up against others or having kind of an internal competition with ourselves, and there's a voice in our head that's telling us you just didn't do enough, you aren't enough, why you could have any kind of range of takeaways from that feeling of not enoughness. It could be, why even bother trying? What's the point? It could be, I have to simply try harder. I have to kind of pull myself by my bootstraps even harder. Or it could be, I'm not the problem, external sources are the problem, and I demand more from external sources. So any of these are kind of on the table in terms of Chiron activations, and like voices in your head that you're grappling with. And so I think that's really important to think about and really notice, are there places in your life where you keep coming back to this idea that you're not enough? And so Chiron has been in Aries for the last like 7 or 8 years. And in Aries, it has really resparked or I guess not resparked, but like, it's not an accident that Chiron and Aries transit coincided with the Me Too movement. And people, again, speaking about workplace abuse, right? Like, and so that was a really big theme. And so that was, I think, one of the reasons why the Aries season was so active in that department was because Chiron was in the final degrees of Aries. And so now Chiron moving into Taurus, we've had a lot of points of accountability that people have taken to hold abusers to account have been rolled back. And we've kind of seen a lot of backsliding in that respect. And so Chiron and Taurus, we're going to see what sticks, and we're going to see what actually is like sturdy in terms of systems of accountability and mechanisms for accountability when it comes to abuse. So that's kind of a collective theme that we can expect. And then I think there's also going to be quite a bit of existentialism around our access to material goods and resources. We kind of had Uranus and Taurus these last time. I'm kind of exhausted because I have a Taurus moon and it's in my fourth house of home. And it's like Uranus and Taurus was exhausting enough, 7, 8 years of Uranus and Taurus. And like we had no break. We got a little couple months break. And now we have Chiron moving into Taurus. And I'm just like, God, please, please, can Taurus people have a little bit of a break? I'm asking so nicely. And the answer is no. So we are going to be experiencing kind of a existentialism around the feeling that maybe what we have access to in terms of our resources is not enough. And so that could be feeling inadequate around money. It could be feeling inadequate around access to food. It could be access to, like if we think about the supply chain crisis that's happening right now, microplastics are up in question, and fertilizers up in question, and it's going to affect crop cycles, next year. And so we're going to see kind of the downstream effect of all these, supply chain crises that happen during Uranus and Taurus. We're going to kind of time to pay the piper, and so there's going to be a little bit of disrupted access to stuff like that. But what I think that means is that we are going to be creative in ways that we have not been up in until this point. And so I think we will see new forms of, local supply chains really kind of might have more of a relevance and impact in a way that they haven't and have been actively destroyed kind of in the past. In favor of globalization, I think we'll see a lot more localism promoted in supply chains, because local supply chains can be more resilient than the globalized ones. So just stuff like that, it's all going to be kind of up in the air. And so I really encourage kind of working on how do you feel safe and secure and enough within yourself as you navigate the uncertainty of what's coming. That's kind of the important theme to think about. So we've got plenty of time to think about it. It's a 7-year transit, and thankfully Taurus season's over, so we don't have to deal with the Chiron and Taurus activation. Well, we're in Taurus season. That's for next year. So we'll see. The next transit that's also really important that's coming up is on June 30th. Jupiter is moving into Leo. And so Jupiter has spent the last year in Cancer. We've talked about it a lot in the context of the cosmic mother and how this has been a really powerful time to really welcome in and really sit in and receive the love that the cosmic mother has to offer us. And kind of, if you have kind of wounding around mothering and being mothered, this was a wonderful transit to really allow yourself to receive mothering from a source outside of the kind of wounding you've experienced, and to really kind of sit in the scale of, this universe that holds us, this universe that birthed us, this universe that nurtures and cultivates us and holds space for everything we're going through and everything we're navigating. So that was kind of your, Gemini, sorry, that was kind of Jupiter in Cancer. And on June 30th, it's going to move into Leo, and that's definitely Big Daddy energy. That's definitely like, Ego by Beyonce is what, this transit's about. Leo energy is all about being loud and proud and who you are, and it's leading from the heart. And Leo people naturally have kind of a spotlight shown on them, and people are naturally gravitated to the warmth of Leo energy. Leo energy helps people feel like anything's possible, like anybody can do, whatever they set out to do. I always think like Obama is my favorite example of a Leo because, however you feel about his politics, you hear that man speak long enough and you're like back on the hope and change train, like you have to actively be like, wait, policies, 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 because if you just listen to him speak, it's like moths to a flame. I mean, he's so captivating. And so he's my favorite Leo example. But so we're going to have a nice Jupiter and Leo transit. And in theory, this would be a really lovely transit. I really think that this is a great transit for aesthetics. I think this is a really fun time to show out, like look good, feel good is definitely the vibe of Jupiter and Leo. And I think it's a really joyful transit in most times, but there's also something else that's going to be co-present with co-present with Jupiter and Leo, and that is the South Node. So on July 26th, the South Node is going to be moving into Leo. And the South Node has to do with like familiar patterns that we feel very entrenched in and that they feel very familiar to us. And we kind of like are experts on this pattern. But what we can find is that staying in these patterns for too long can feel really unfulfilling, and they can feel like been there, done that, and we can feel a bit restless around them. And so when we're moving through a South Node transit, it's like that sector of the sky in our charts, like how, what is an entrenched pattern that we have in terms of how we relate to that section of our chart. And the South Node gives us an opportunity to say, do you still want to relate in this way, or do you want to do something different? And so, the kind of attributes of a Leo or Leo energy that can be really frustrating or irritating or depleting or draining is the ego, right? The kind of insecurity that Leos may feel, or the inadequacy that Leos may feel, and kind of a sense of even the adding to that not enoughness feeling of Chiron, definitely contributing to that, but definitely like a need to be seen and a need to be accepted. And so we can try to find acceptance in spaces that are not for us. So one thing I always tell Leo people is that all Leos have to do is show up. And that sounds easy, but one, Leos have to be in the right headspace when they show up, you know? So there's a lot of internal work that's required of a Leo to make sure that they're able to show up and be themselves. The easiest part is definitely showing up and be themselves, but the actual inner work that it requires to like be good enough, like internally to then show up externally like that takes quite a bit of work. And then the other piece of that is, are you showing up in the right rooms? Because if you're not in the right room, people are not going to receive you, they're not going to hear you, they're going to project onto you. You're not really going to experience the kind of warmth and ease of flow that Leos experience when they're in the right room. And so discernment is really important, because sometimes a Leo's ego can be really wrapped up in the room they're trying to show up and be seen in. And it can be hard for them to grasp that, like, hey, this is not, people aren't receiving you here. So hit the bricks, go somewhere else, go find where you're received, like, so like if your ego is attached to that room, then you're going to keep trying. And so that, I think, is going to be the Saturn and Leo transit in a lot of ways, where there's going to be a lot of people that are staying in rooms that don't see them, don't respect them, don't value what they contribute in the space. And Leos are going to be trying to seek that approval over and over again. And the thing is, Jupiter in Leo means Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So we can expect that, the Jupiter transit is going to be like really like taking these kind of little things that we could probably ignore otherwise. Like, what I love about the nodes is they're completely opt-in. You can't they're not forced on you, activate, like engaging with the nodes is something that's completely opt-in, it's optional. But Jupiter being there means that Jupiter will make it not optional. Jupiter will force you to kind of reckon. So the small niggling feeling of like seeking validation in a room that's not giving it to you and like feeling attached to that, Jupiter's going to make that a big feeling in you, and it's going to be kind of like central to your experience of this transit. And so I really encourage you to be aware of the rooms that you're looking for acceptance in, and do your best to try to line up a room receiving you warmly with your attachment, like be attached to the rooms that receive you warmly. And if you're not received that way, like hit the bricks. So that's my rundown on the actual transits. We'll get more in detail, in the next episode with the South Node and Leo. We'll also be talking about eclipse season, because that's August, so there's quite a lot coming down the pipeline July, August in terms of activation of these placements. And so we can expect a lot of confrontations in relation to ego, in relation to this feeling of not enoughness, and in relation to our sense of self-construction. So a lot of it is like very like identity formation, like who are we and how are we showing up in this moment of flux. And so, much to think about. But yeah, I just wanted to give a little briefing on that whole transit. So yeah, any thoughts on that before we move to the tarot horoscope, Stevie?
Just crazy.
Yeah.
I I know we've talked about the asshole transits so many times, and I feel like it's, for me, the way I remember it is just like this is just going to be a time, but breaking it down bit by bit. Yeah. I'm glad we're back. I'm glad I'm glad we're back to talk about this. Those are my feelings.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the tarot.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, this tarot horoscope is covering June 16th to July 14th. And if you're listening outside of those dates, just take what resonates. You were called to this episode for a reason.
Thank you, Shroot. Okay, since it's Pride, we're using the Queer Tarot deck. Hooray! It's from Ashley Malesso and Chess Needham, and it's so sweet and cute and colorful and whimsical, and it is reading us to filth for Pride and for this next month. I pulled 3 cards as usual. We got the Lovers reversed, then we got the 7 of Cups, and then the 5 of Cups. Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, lovers reversed. Really, if you take anything away from this, I just want you to connect with your heart. What is it trying to tell you? What is it whispering and what is it yelling? It's probably doing the same thing. Like like that's the pipeline is probably very short. It's whispering something like, "Hey, this doesn't feel good. Hey, I don't feel really comfortable." Like it's probably whispering at you and you're like, "Anyway, I don't have time to think about that right now." You know that oh my gosh. It's like a tweet and it's like, "I'm probably non-binary, but I'm in school, so I don't have time to think about that right now." Very much that. So, what is it whispering? What is your heart whispering? And what is it yelling? What has it been trying to communicate with you that you just feel like you don't have time or capacity for, which I understand. Specifically, what's not in alignment with your desires, your goals, your values? What conversations and arguments are you playing out in your head when you're in the shower, when you can't sleep at night, when you're alone, when you're in the car? Like what is actually coming to the surface when no one else is around? Because it's very telling. Like these are coming up for a reason. You keep coming back to these scenarios, these ideas, these thoughts, these daydreams for a reason. And you can't keep blaming the intensity of these thoughts or these feelings on your period or work stress or the astrology, although we know it like doesn't help because no matter what, once these things subside or die down a little bit, these feelings are still there. And so maybe when things subside, it goes back to being a whisper. And when you're on your period or when there's work stress or these asshole transits, like they are making them a yell, a scream, a cry for help. And no matter what, it is still trying to communicate the same thing to you. And it's really important that you take the time to listen, to honor it, and you can just stop there for now. Like, we don't always have to come to our emotions or our feelings or our thoughts, our pain with an action step, although we will get into action steps. But right now, you have to nurture, you have to listen and nurture and be empathetic. And I don't know who that feels easier for, who that feels impossible to. Shroot, maybe you can tell us some signs, but like ultimately, what does happiness and harmony mean to you? Does it feel out of reach? What feels within reach? Where is it already existing in your relationships with other people and yourself and the things that you do in this world? Take inventory, like I'm always going to tell you to do, because we are constantly reassessing and figuring out what is nourishing me, what is holding me back, where am I, who am I, when am I. Um, but yeah, reflect and be honest with yourself, even if that means it uncovers a decision that you have to make that feels scary. When happiness and harmony are on the other side of this wall, fear is just a small price to pay in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, that is the levers reversed. Any thoughts, Shrew?
Yeah, I definitely think that this is like Cancer season as a whole. I think this is definitely what we can expect from Cancer season. I don't think it's an accident that one of the first major transits of Cancer season is June 25th, where the Sun in Cancer is square Neptune in Aries. So that's the Sun kind of engaging with that, previously mentioned whole transit. And basically it's like, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, like what are the stories we're telling ourselves about the feelings that come up, and so I think that's a really important thing to think about, where um there's a concept called the theory of constructed emotion, and I really encourage looking into that. There's a book on the topic called How Emotions Are Made, and it's a really good book. I'll link it in the description. But it's got a lot of neuroscience, and it's like got a lot of studies kind of like included in the book of how the theory of constructed emotion came to be. But basically, it's this idea that our emotions are kind of predictive elements that are shaped by our external environments. They're shaped by our cultural norms. They're shaped by our family, norms. They're kind of shaped by all these different layers of society that influence us, and that emotions are not a fixed concept. Like that, the idea of what happiness means and how happiness is experienced in the body is not a universal concept. It is culturally and socially specific to your positionality, which I think is really beautiful. And I think it's really valuable to really think about, what are the stories, or what are the things you were exposed to that shaped how you relate to your emotions and shape how your emotions then shape you. And so, yeah, this is a really powerful month to reflect on that in general. And I think that this activation of the Sun in Cancer square Neptune in Aries is really calling that within us of like, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about ourselves? How do we view ourselves? Is there any kind of like illusions or deception in how we're engaging with our emotions and the stories we're telling ourselves about our emotions, and how that then reflects back on how we think of ourselves, our self-perception? And the idea is that this is like inherently a murky thing. This is not a clear-cut, objective, logic-based thing, right? This is something that's really fluid, and it's not static, and it's not fixed in terms of the bounds of our experience of this. And so yeah, I think it's worth really reflecting on the fluidity of these feelings that come and go, and yeah, just the stories you're talking about it. And this is going to be a theme that runs all the way through Cancer season, because we do have a Mercury retrograde in Cancer during the season. So that shadow phase for Mercury retrograde has already started. It started on June 12th, and the shadow phase is a period of time before Mercury is actually retrograde, where we can start feeling the effects of the retrograde. So I like to call it phase 1 of retrograde, where it's basically problem identification. So as of this point, you should start feeling kind of a sense of like something is unsustainable, and something needs to be adjusted or reflected on or shifted or revisited in relation to how I view my emotions and how I relate to my emotions and the stories I'm telling myself about my emotions and the way that I think about my emotions, and even maybe the way I communicate them. And so that phase 1 has begun, and we move into phase 2, which is the actual retrograde period. So Mercury stations retrograde on June 29th. And so that's phase 2, I like to call is the experimentation phase, where the goal of Mercury retrograde is to just try a bunch of stuff and see, throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So really experiment with, different ways. Like, what if, the way you relate to your anxiety, it's like, oh, um, I wasn't really given space for my emotions as a kid, and so I developed a lot of anxiety around feeling my emotions, and I have a lack of safety around my big feelings. So then it's like, okay, that's the story that I've been telling myself, for all this time. It's like, okay, I'm kind of feeling ready to outgrow that story. I don't feel like that story quite fits anymore. Maybe the story that I'm telling myself now is that, like, over the years, that was the hand that I was dealt in terms of how I was raised. But in my adulthood, I've made strides in terms of understanding my emotions better, maybe learning more emotional regulation strategies. Maybe I learned that it's easier for me to sit with the gravity of my emotions if I'm not doing it alone. So, like, kind of thinking about the ways that, like, instead of saying, oh, yeah, because of my childhood, I have a really hard time sitting with my emotions, instead saying, I'm in the process of learning how to sit with my emotions. That's the story that I want to tell about my emotions and my relationship to them. So that's something to be thinking about. Mercury retrograde ends on July 23rd. It stations direct, and then shadow phase, phase 3. And I call shadow phase the ending shadow phase, which is phase 3 of Mercury retrograde. I call that the solutions phase. So you can expect from July 23rd to August 6th, you can expect solutions to start showing up. So then, like, what I love about, this 3 phase of Mercury retrograde is that, we are such a solution oriented society, and we have such a hard time sitting with our emotions, and we feel so uncomfortable with that. So I feel like Mercury retrograde forces us to kind of go through these steps where it's like during problem identification in phase 1, like, there is no solutions. That's not the point. The point is to just sit with the problem. And then phase two, the point is to just experiment around the problem, try something new, revisit it, see it from a different light, get some outside opinions. Like it's kind of experimenting and playing with the problem and without expecting solutions. The point is not to find solutions. The point is to just try something new for the sake of trying something new. And then phase three, that's when we actually start to see solutions. And what we find is that solutions can kind of emerge naturally. It's something that kind of like, if we've done the work in phase one and phase two, we can start to kind of see solutions like emerge from within us, and they just kind of like speak to us of like, oh yeah, we wake up one morning and we're like, oh, that's what I'm going to do now. Or, you know, somebody says something and it really triggers something in our brain where we're like, oh yeah, that's how I'm moving now. So really kind of like, I want you to kind of understand that this is an open topic and that like you're going to be reckoning with it all summer long. And so really give yourself the space and the patience to be in the weeds with your emotions and be in the weeds with the stories you're telling yourself, and allow yourself kind of spaciousness to grapple with that. So, yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Take it in, everyone. Take it in. Okay. On the topic of all of that, taking inventory, figuring things out, doing things for the sake of trying, we'll get into the Seven of Cups. Wow. There are so many options, especially when you are like actually looking at what's in front of you, around you, behind you, under you. I don't know. There are so many options, and you're figuring out what's right for you. And that feels so broad and abstract sometimes, and also kind of like terrifying because we're always on the, the theme of we're trying to avoid our emotions. We want to go into solutions. One of our solutions is trying to find the most right, perfect answer, solution to get us out of whatever the heck we've been dealing with, that we feel so stuck in, XYZ. And of course, we want you to weigh out your options. We want you to think about what each of them could require, what the consequences, what the impact could be. And we encourage you to make a decision anyway, because you don't have to make a decision by thinking about the next 10 steps ahead of you. You just have to focus on the next step, one step at a time. See what happens, see what ripples and uncovers and whatever. You have to start making moves and get out of the analysis paralysis. You've already done so much time contemplating about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if I do this? What if I don't do this? You are already in your own little tornado of what ifs, and you have to go around and find out. Basically, you just have to do that. Commit to fucking around and finding out. Especially, it sounds like the retrograde is the time to do it. I know that we can feel really afraid of the retrograde. Things can feel very tense, like you're walking on eggshells, like everything is so sensitive. That's just tea. But you want a hot body? You want a Bugatti? You want a Maserati? You better work. You have to work. You have to do the work. You can't keep waiting for others to change and situations to change in order to make your life easier. You are responsible for making your life easier and for choosing things that are in alignment with your highest good, for the future that you want, for the legacy that you want to create. It is on you, and it's on you to commit to that every single moment, every single day. This is not the time to have one foot out the door and in the other. Like, you have to go full send, 10 toes down. Trust me. Trust me. I am always contemplating. I am always thinking about the what ifs. And, I've always said it's going to get to a point where you no longer have an option but to do something differently. I did that. I won't tell you what, I won't tell you why, but just know that I stood 10 toes down and I did something different. I did the thing that I was always thinking about, always prepared to do, but never did. And it made a big difference. Do I know what's going on? No. Do I know the future of whatever the heck this is? No. But I did it and I'm figuring it out. And it's given me a lot more space and time, not necessarily to think about it or process it, but I did it. And that is one less thing that I have to do or contemplate or decide. And I'm sure that you are getting to a point where you got to stand 10 toes down. You kind of have no choice anymore. You have to rise to the occasion for yourself. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your ancestors, your descendants. We'll get into that later. But you got to work. You got to be so for real right now. I can't keep holding your hand unless you pay me. But but I'm going to land that plane there. Shroot, what do you think?
Ooh, yeah. Oh my God, perfect card for the kind of most dramatic transit of this time period. Before we get into the more drama in, the latter half of July and into August. The kind of drama, basically what's happening is Mars in the sky is moving into um, Gemini, and that's happening on June 28th. And Mars in Gemini, Mars is the planet that rules taking action. It's the planet that rules, I call it the fighting and fighting planet, where it's the planet where we're really asserting our sense of like selfhood and we're really asserting our view of the world and we're taking action on it. And so Mars is not very comfortable in Gemini because Mars is all about taking action. Mars is about doing. Mars placements love to leap before they look. And so Gemini is a sign that is all about taking in information, and it's a sign about deliberating and, weighing things against each other and examining things in different lights and taking in different perspectives and making connections that maybe others didn't see. And so Gemini is not necessarily about action, it's about information. And so Mars is like, no, 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 but we still need to move. And Gemini is like, well, hold on one second. I'm just talking to this one person. Well, hold on one second. I just have to think about this one thing. Well, hold on one second. I don't have time for that because I've committed to all these things. Like, so that's kind of the rub with Mars and Gemini, and we're really kind of reaching a little bit of a climax point where we're being pushed to take action anyway on July 4th, which yikes, yikes on a bike. Because Uranus in Gemini is going to be conjunct Mars in Gemini on July 4th. So that's an ugly, that's a very, forced confrontation transit where you're expected to, react to whatever uncertain thing. Uranus rules unexpected, things falling apart to fall together, technological advancements, eureka moments, like Uranus rules lightning strikes where, lightning strikes and now everything suddenly is different and we have to navigate what's different about that. And so we can expect, around and on this transit of July 4th, we can expect that things are going to be shaken up for us externally, and we are going to be forced to react to external things in our environment. And when it comes to planning and taking in information and weighing things before actually taking action, I don't really think that's all that valuable this couple months, because I'll be honest, if you're trying to plan for the long term of your life, you're not going to know what to plan for until November. And I really say this from a place of empathy. I can't stand it. It really upsets and devastates me that I'm a planner, especially planning as a coping strategy, as a tool of escapism, as a tool of regulation in the face of uncertainty. I love planning. Even if the plans never come to fruition, I just love the act of planning. And it's futile. It's completely futile because things are going to happen in July, August that are going to shake the whole world, and they are going to completely change the direction, the trajectory that the universe and the world is moving through. This is the astrology that is so magnanimous that it's literally the astrology I became an astrologer because I was learning, astrology transits in 2018 just for fun for myself, and I noticed that the astrology of 2020 was particularly loud and dramatic and unique. And then I noticed that 2026 was even more loud, dramatic, and unique, to the point where the astrology of 2026, and especially the astrology of July, August of 2026, is some of the most unique astrology in human history. the combinations that are happening now don't happen often, and especially not all at once like this. We've had basically like six outer planets, six placements move from one sign to another. It's a big collective shift that's happening. You know, if you feel the magnitude of that, you're not imagining it. It is a very once in a lifetime, once in a humanity's stretch of life, experience. And so, lucky for us, we're on board and we're the ones who are having to navigate it. And so, yeah, I just, expecting things to really be colossal in scale in terms of how they shift in the collective. And you will it will trickle down to how it affects you personally, and you'll have to plan around that. And so I really encourage, any plans you might have for next year, kind of going beyond, just wait till November to really check in with those plans and see how feasible they are. Like, don't really try to focus too hard on that. And so that's why I love the advice that Stevie gave, which is just really drill down into what's the next step right in front of you. And I think that's a really valuable way. Like, we won't really know kind of like the impact of, I mean, I'll know, I'll tell you. But like in your own individual life, you won't really know the way that this reverberates until next year. And so, um, just looking at what's right in front of you and what needs to get done right in front of you and focusing on that is a really valuable strategy. But it is going to feel very counterintuitive and very frustrating because Mars is in Gemini, and it does not like, Gemini energy is really resistant to this kind of approach. And yet we're going to need to do it anyway. So I really encourage you to stick with it and get help and do it in community with others if it's becoming a little too unfeasible to do it on your own.
Can't help. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's gonna be tough. We know that abstractly. Shroot knows that tangibly. We'll find out. We'll see. We'll see what it's all about once we get there. But this brings me to our last card, Five of Cups. Away. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be tough. You might not feel too good. I don't know. When we honor our truth and move towards greater alignment with ourselves, a lot of the time that means that we have to let go of people and things and ways of being that we've become attached to, we've become accustomed to. Even if these things bring us so much stress and I don't know, I'm just going to say stress. Even if these things are stressful, we are attached to them, accustomed to them, we love them, care for them in some way, shape, or form. It brings us something, or it did. It served a purpose. Relationship served a purpose that, maybe you've outgrown. Grief and heartbreak and distress, they remind us that we're human and and alive, really. Many of us go through great lengths to avoid feeling bad, feeling grief, feeling heartbreak, feeling distress, feeling unsafe. But no matter how fast we try to outrun it, like these feelings, these experiences will always catch up. We are not exempt from feeling and experiencing the full range of human emotions. So feel your feelings. Find ways to contain them, not like stuff them down, but find ways to create a ritual that allows you to mark this transitional period, cry, yell, rip shit up. I don't know. Like, let it out. Don't let it live in you unless you want to suffer even more. And if you don't already have an autoimmune disease, get an autoimmune disease. Um, but try to remind yourself that things won't always feel this hard. Hopefully, this year won't always feel this hard, even though we have all these full transits that let's find 5 minutes, 5 minutes in a day, 2 minutes in a day. I don't know. Either way, the only constant in life is change. And it's not always going to change into the worst thing in the world, although worst things in the world can and do happen. alongside some of the best things in the world, some tenderness and joy and alleviation and all those things. Express gratitude for whatever you're letting go. Express gratitude for what it taught you, what it was, how it ended. And remember that you are clearing the path. You're not healing just yourself, but you're healing your ancestors, your descendants by doing what's best for you, just like they did for you. I am really resistant and kind of reject the like, oh, I, I'm the first in my family to do this. I'm I'm the one like breaking all the generational curses and all that stuff because it really invalidates everything else that everyone else did. And maybe it wasn't perfect and maybe obviously it's still like ended in creating the hardships in the life that you're experiencing. They put in work too and they survived too. Maybe it's still dysfunctional, but it doesn't start with you. It doesn't always end with you either. This is a collaborative, intergenerational, probably interdimensional process that just remind yourself that you're not alone in it. You have us, you have the bleeding hearts, you have them, you have people you'll never meet, but will be directly tied to you. Do what's best for you in just that next step. And you may be experiencing a loss and heartbreak and all that stuff. That's okay. But remind yourself that there is so much more that you will gain and you'll get to experience. And you'll cry and you'll yell and you'll have fun and you'll laugh and all of those things. But yeah, that's what we got going on in this next month.
Uh, yeah, there's some astrology that lines up so beautifully with this. So on July 9th, Venus in the sky is moving into Virgo, and on July 10th, that Venus in Virgo is going to be conjunct the South Node in Virgo at 0 degrees. So this is an experience where the nodes in the sky actually move backwards in the chart because they're mathematical points. There's math involved. It's not important. But they move backwards. And so when planets are conjunct the nodes, they're typically crossing paths like this because the nodes are moving like this and the planets are moving. Well, you can't hear that. The nodes are moving clockwise and the planets are moving counterclockwise. So they're like ships in the night. They're passing each other from opposite directions. Venus on July 10th, Venus is going to be conjunct the South Node in. Oh my gosh, on the 10th, Venus in Virgo is going to be conjunct the South Node in Virgo. And so this is a really, really impactful transit when it comes to our patterning in our relationships. And, Virgos are kind of known for being a bit stingy or a bit picky with who they let in. They have really good boundaries. They're really good at discernment. They're really good at reading people and analyzing people's patterns of behavior. And they don't really get caught up in but I love him. Like when they're first assessing somebody, they're very, very discerning of like, is this person worth the quality of my investment in them? Because Virgo, especially Virgo Venuses, they know the value of what they provide in relationships. But then what happens with Virgo Venuses, but Venus energy and sorry, Virgo energy in general is that once a Virgo has deemed you worthy, once a Virgo has opened themselves up to you, they are kind of locked in for maybe way longer than they should be, Like it takes Venus, especially Virgo Venus, but definitely Virgo energy, it takes them a little bit longer to like realize when a situation is not serving them. And so I think this transit is really offering a wake up call to any Virgos of like, okay, like, I have been giving this person so many chances and I have offered them so many resources and I've offered them so much support and so much help and I've really given them like a nice cleanly laid out pathway with instructions accompanied and photos attached and references they can rely on and I've given them everything they need to move through this and yet they are not. They are not doing that and it is hurting me. So if you find yourself in that type of situation, whether you're a Virgo or not, if you find yourself kind of in a pattern like that with other people, you can find this July 10th activation to be pretty triggering in this respect. And it's asking you to I really encourage you to look at the wholeness of the situation because if we know that if the south node is somewhere, then right directly opposite that is the north node. So if Venus is conjunct the south node, that means Venus is also opposite the north node. And so the north node in Pisces, at this last degree of Pisces, is offering us technically 0 degrees, but because it's backwards, it's the north node and south node's last degree. But it's offering us this opportunity to really look at the wholeness of a situation and not drill into the series of logic that brought us to the conclusion of involving these people in our lives, but rather looking at the full picture and zooming out and really seeing the wholeness of the situation and being able to be with the wholeness of the situation, where it's like, yeah, the assessment that I made when I first let this person in my life, like that's not really representative of where we are now and what's going on now. And so I really encourage kind of looking at the wholeness of the situation and being willing to engage with circumstances now being different and how that shapes how you could move with that person. And I really loved what CB said about gratitude, because I think gratitude is such an integral part of like Pisces energy. And I think that this transit is a reminder that, like, when we are moving through patterns, when we are choosing to do something different, gratitude can be a really powerful anchor as we navigate the uncertainty of that. So if you are, showing up differently in a relationship, if you are cutting a relationship loose, if you are moving differently than you have in the past, holding on to gratitude for what was, holding on to gratitude for what is, and holding on to gratitude for what could be is a really valuable thing that can kind of keep you a little bit anchored and steady through the process. And then on July 13th, very quickly, this is all happening very quickly in July. It's really one thing after the other in July. So basically on the 13th, Venus is going to be square Uranus. And so that's where I think that, you're going to feel these feelings on the 10th, and then you're not going to do anything with them because that's what Virgos do. They're like, no, 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 I committed, so I'm in this. Then Uranus is going to show up on the 13th, and it's going to send you something externally that really forces you to confront this. And so I would really be open to the signs that the universe is offering you, and the information that universe is offering you in terms of whether you should be moving differently or not in your relationships, and how can you show up in a way that is not depleting to yourself or draining to yourself, and how can you not let the people that you invest in drain you. So yeah, much to think about. I think that's the kind of closing note of the astrology in relation to that card.
Yeah. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, we're really
Let
rooting
us
for you.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a very tumultuous time, and a lot is changing, a lot's being uprooted, and just know that the strategies that we've offered you in 2 years of this podcast are all strategies that were preparing you for this exact moment. So if you've ever employed even one strategy you've learned from this podcast, if you've ever thought about something differently as a relation to this podcast, then know that you've been preparing this whole time, and that really have some faith in the fact that, like, you got this, and whatever happens, whatever wherever we're checking in on the other side in the next episode, whatever's going down, just know that, this is temporary, and the volatility of this year is something we'll never experience again, and most humans, even going forward, will never experience. We don't have another kind of high intensity drama uh, transits until 2060s is the next time we'll experience this, like, even close, and it's not even close. It's like a 2-5% of this level of volatility, and like it's 2060s, and I have a feeling that'll be the climate change uh, moment where we're really reckoning with is this world habitable for humans or not. I think we'll be really reckoning with that in that era, but that's a hot take for another day. We can be existential about that another day. But yeah, so just trust that, like, this is going to pass, and that you can kind of take care of yourself. You can take care of your community. You can let your community take care of you as you navigate the intensity of these transits. You don't have to do this alone, and that we're with you. Even when you feel like you're alone, we're with you.
Thank you, Shroot, for putting so much into context and for preparing us so devotingly. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for, holding so much space for all of our resistance, because we've all been resisting this. And you have created so much space for us to just be with that without expectation. And I think that's been really valuable.
Thanks, pal. And thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks for rocking with us. It's been a hell of a 2 years. And yeah, we would love to hear from you. Like we said, it helps us in terms of, knowing what we want to offer y'all, and how we want to show up on this podcast. So definitely let us know feedback, or write in with a question. As usual, all the links to do that are in the show notes, like I've already said. And yeah, we're wishing you health and happiness and abundance and expansion and safety and community. So. We'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.